Hi friends, I want you to do something for me right now. I want you to close your eyes for just a moment. Go ahead. Close them. And I want you to think about the last time you felt truly free. Not free like a vacation, not free like a weekend off work. I mean truly, deeply, from the inside out, free. Free to be exactly who you are. Free to dream without fear. Free to walk into a room and feel like you belong there. Free to say, this is my life. And I am living it on my own terms. Can you remember that feeling? Now open your eyes, because somewhere between who you were born to be and who the world told you to become, something happened. Something got lost. And if you're sitting here today, or standing, or lying in your bed watching this at 2 in the morning, because you can't sleep because something in your chest won't let you rest. If you're here, it's because some part of you knows you are trapped, and some part of you is desperately, quietly, sometimes silently screaming to get out. I see you. I hear you. And I want you to know, you are not alone. My name is Priyanka Chopra, and I have been exactly where you are. Not a version of where you are. Not something similar. I have been in the dark. I have been in the confusion. I have been in the room where everyone was celebrating and I was smiling on the outside and dying on the inside because I had no idea who I was anymore. I have had people tell me I was too much and not enough at the exact same time. I have had industries, systems, people I loved try to fit me into a box. And for a long time, a long, painful, expensive time, I let them. So today, I'm not here to give you a list of 5 tips to change your life. I'm not here to sell you a morning routine or a productivity hack. I'm here to talk to you about something real. Something that took me decades to understand. I'm here to talk to you about why you feel trapped. And more importantly, what it actually takes to break free. Are you ready? Because this isn't going to be comfortable. Growth never is. Let me take you back. Let me take you all the way back to a little girl in Bareilly, India. A small town, a military family, a father who was a doctor in the Indian Army, and a mother who was also a doctor. 2 people who worked so hard, who sacrificed so much, who loved their children with everything they had. And in that home, there was this little girl who was loud, unapologetically, embarrassingly, sometimes annoyingly loud. She had opinions. She danced in the living room like nobody was watching even when everybody was watching. She sang off key and didn't care. She wore her father's oversized army boots and stomped around the house like she owned it. She believed, in the way only children can believe, with their whole body, their whole soul, that she was going to do something extraordinary with her life. That little girl was me. And then life happened. I was sent to America as a teenager. My parents thought it would give me better opportunities. And it did, eventually. But first it broke me down in ways I didn't even have words for at the time. I was brown in a country that didn't always know what to do with brown. I had an accent. I had a different name. I had different food in my lunchbox. I was bullied. Not softly, not gently. I was called names. I was told I didn't belong. I was told to go back to my country. There were days I walked into school and felt like I was walking into a wall of rejection. Every single day. And here's what happens to you when you experience that. When you're young and your identity is still forming, and the world starts telling you that who you are is wrong, you start to believe it. Slowly, quietly, you start to edit yourself. You start to make yourself smaller. You start to laugh less, take up less space, speak less, dream less. Because dreaming feels dangerous when the world has already told you your dreams are too big for someone like you. That is the first trap, friends. The first and maybe the most powerful trap of all. The trap of other people's opinions becoming your own voice. Think about that. Think about how many of your thoughts, your so-called beliefs about yourself, were actually planted there by someone else. A teacher who told you you weren't smart enough. A parent who, with the best intentions, told you to be practical. A friend who laughed at your idea. A stranger who looked at you and made you feel invisible. A society that handed you a script and said, "Here, this is who you're supposed to be. Don't deviate." And over time, you stopped even questioning it. The cage became so familiar that you started calling it home. I came back to India. I was 17. And almost by accident, I still shake my head at the randomness of it. I won Miss World. 2017-year-olds from India. And the girl who was bullied, the girl who felt like she didn't belong anywhere, the girl who had shrunk herself down to almost nothing. She stood on that stage and she won. And you know what I thought in that moment? I thought, no, everything will be okay. Now I belong. Now the world will accept me. I was wrong. Because here's what nobody tells you about success. External success, the kind that comes from winning a title or getting a promotion or being accepted by the crowd. It doesn't fix the inside. It cannot. It is a band-aid on a wound that needs surgery. And if you don't do the inner work, if you don't go back and find that little girl or that little boy who was told they weren't enough, and you don't look them in the eye and tell them the truth, that they were always enough, that they were always worthy, no amount of external achievement will ever make you feel free. I entered Bollywood, and Bollywood was an education, a brutal, beautiful, complicated education, I was told. And I want you to really hear this, because I know so many of you have heard versions of this in your own life. I was told that I needed to change. My skin was too dark. My nose was too big. My personality was too strong. I needed to be softer, quieter, more accommodating. I needed to fit the mold of what a Bollywood heroine was supposed to look like, act like, be like. And you know what's terrifying? I almost did it. I almost let them sand down every edge that made me me. I had a surgery, a nose surgery, that went wrong. And suddenly the very thing they had told me to fix became something I had to fight to reclaim. My nose, my face, my identity. I had to fight to say, this is my face and I refuse to be ashamed of it. And that fight, that painful, humbling, terrifying fight, that was one of the first times I began to understand what it really means to reclaim yourself. But the traps kept coming. They always do. Because here's the truth about the trap of life. It's not one big cage. It's a series of small ones. And each one is more subtle than the last. Each one is more disguised, more comfortable, more convincing. And the most dangerous traps are not the ones that feel like pain. The most dangerous traps are the ones that feel like safety. Let me say that again, because I need you to sit with it. The most dangerous traps are the ones that feel like safety. The job that pays well but makes you feel dead inside. The relationship that is comfortable but has no real connection. The city you live in because you grew up there, not because it feeds your soul. The life you built because it made sense on paper, not because it makes your heart race. The person you became because it was easier than becoming who you actually are. That is the trap of comfort. And it is the trap that swallows the most dreams, the most potential, the most beautiful human lives. Not dramatically, not in one big moment, just slowly, quietly, day by day, until you look up one morning and realize you don't recognize yourself anymore. I know this trap personally. There came a point in my career in India where I was at the top. I was one of the biggest stars in Bollywood. I was working on 3-4 films a year. I was on every magazine cover. I had achieved everything that I had been told to want. And I was miserable, not unhappy, not just tired, miserable, lost, empty. And the scariest part was that from the outside, everything looked perfect. And so I couldn't even explain it, not to my family, not to my friends, not to myself. How do you say, I have everything and I feel like I have nothing? How do you say, I have climbed to the top of the mountain and the view means nothing to me? You don't. Because the world doesn't have space for that kind of honesty. The world says, you should be grateful. And you are grateful. And you're also drowning. And both things are true at the same time. That is what trap looks like for those of us who have achieved things. That is the trap that no one talks about. Not the poverty trap. Not the failure trap. The success trap. The trap of having built a life that looks right but feels wrong. The trap of being afraid to blow it all up and start again because you've worked so hard to get here, and what would people think, and who would you even be without all of this. And so you stay, you smile, you perform, you keep going. And every year, the gap between your public self and your private self grows wider and wider and wider, until one day you realize you can't even remember which one is real. I had a moment. I remember it clearly. I was sitting in my apartment in Mumbai. It was late. Everyone had gone home. And I just sat in the silence and I thought, is this it? Is this really it? Is this what I worked so hard for? Is this all there is? And in that moment, I had a choice. The same choice that every single one of you will face at some point in your life, if you haven't already. The choice between going back to sleep, pulling the comfortable blanket of your familiar life back over your head and pretending the question was never asked, or staying awake, staying in the discomfort, sitting with the truth, and asking yourself the hardest question you will ever ask. What do I actually want? Not what do my parents want? Not what does my community expect? Not what would make people respect me or envy me or love me? What do I, this one singular, irreplaceable human being, what do I want from this one life I have been given? I chose to stay awake, and it cost me. I want you to know that. Because people sometimes hear the story of reinvention, and they think it was romantic. They think it was brave in a cinematic, beautiful way. It was not. It was terrifying. It was lonely. It was expensive, professionally, socially, emotionally. When I decided to pursue Hollywood, when I said yes to Quantico, when I began to build a life in America, again, I lost things. I lost relationships with people who thought I was abandoning them. I lost opportunities in Bollywood because I was no longer fully present there. I had years of doubt, years of being underestimated. Years of walking into rooms in Hollywood where people didn't know who I was and didn't particularly want to know. There were auditions I didn't get. There were roles I wanted desperately that went to someone else. There were days I sat in my car in a parking lot and cried because I had given everything I had and it still wasn't enough. There were moments I thought, maybe they're right. Maybe I'm dreaming too big. Maybe I should go back to what I know, to where I'm celebrated, to where the path is clear. I didn't go back. Not because I was brave. I want to strip that word away for a moment, because I think we use brave to put people on pedestals in a way that makes their journey feel unreachable for the rest of us. I didn't stay the course because I was brave. I stayed the course because the alternative? Going back to sleep. Going back to a life that looked right and felt wrong was no longer something I was willing to do. The discomfort of growth had become more bearable than the pain of staying still. And that, friends, is when the shift happens. That is the turning point in every single human transformation story I have ever heard. Not when it stops being hard. Not when everything falls into place. Not when you finally feel ready. Because I need you to hear this clearly. You will never feel ready. The day you feel completely ready is not coming. You will always be a little scared. You will always have doubts. You will always be able to find a reason to wait, a reason to hesitate, a reason to say, not yet. The shift happens when the pain of staying where you are becomes greater than the fear of where you might go. That is the moment. That is the crack in the cage. That is where the light gets in. Now, I want to talk about something that I think is at the heart of why so many of us feel trapped. And I want to talk about it honestly, even though it might make some people uncomfortable. I want to talk about identity. Who are you? Not your job title, not your relationship status, not your nationality, not your religion, not the number in your bank account, not the number of followers on your social media. Who are you beneath all of that? Who are you when you strip away every role you play? The daughter, the son, the parent, the professional, the provider, the achiever, who is left? Most of us have never asked ourselves that question because we're terrified of the answer. Or more precisely, we're terrified that there might not be an answer, that underneath all the roles and all the achievements and all the masks, there might be nothing, or something small, or something shameful. But I want to tell you something. In every single moment of my life, when I have been forced to strip everything away, And there have been several. Through loss and failure and public humiliation and private devastation, what I have found underneath was not nothing. It was not shameful. What I found underneath was something so simple and so profound that it took my breath away every time. I found myself, not the performed self, not the curated self, not the self that was built for other people's consumption. The real, raw, unpolished, complicated, contradictory, wonderful self. The self that has both darkness and light. The self that has made mistakes and grown from them. The self that is still, after all of it, curious about this world. Still capable of love, still capable of wonder, still against all odds capable of joy. That is who you are beneath the trap. That is what is waiting for you on the other side of the cage. And I think about all the ways we avoid that. I think about how we live in the most distracted era in human history. We have devices in our pockets that are specifically designed, engineered by the most brilliant minds in the world, to keep us from sitting with ourselves. Every moment of potential silence is filled. Every moment of potential stillness is scrolled away. Every moment we could spend asking ourselves the hard questions. We spend watching someone else's life and wondering why ours doesn't look like that. And I'm not saying technology is evil. I'm not saying social media is the enemy. But I am saying that if you are using business, if you are using noise, if you are using any external thing, food, alcohol, shopping, work, even exercise, if you are using it to avoid feeling what you actually feel, to avoid hearing what your own heart is trying to tell you, then you are building your own cage, brick by brick, scroll by scroll, distraction by distraction. The cage of avoidance is one we build ourselves. And the key is terrifyingly simple. Sit down, be still, feel it, all of it. The fear, the grief, the anger, the longing, the love, the loss. Feel it fully. Because on the other side of feeling is freedom. And on the other side of avoidance is a life you don't recognize. I lost my father. I need to slow down here because this is something I don't talk about easily, even now, even years later. My father was my person. He was my safe harbor. He was the one who always believed in me before I believed in myself. He would call me from wherever in the world he was, and he would say, Mimi. That was his name for me. Mimi, you can do anything. Don't let anyone tell you differently. When he was diagnosed with cancer, my world cracked in half. When we lost him, the crack became a chasm, and I went through a period of grief so profound that I questioned everything. I questioned my purpose. I questioned my future. I questioned whether any of what I was chasing even mattered in the face of this loss that felt so enormous, so permanent, so cruel. Grief is a particular kind of trap because it doesn't just make you sad, it makes you afraid. Afraid to love again because love ends in loss. Afraid to invest because everything is temporary. Afraid to fully show up to your own life because what's the point? Really, if it's all going to be taken away, and I could have stayed in that trap, it would have been understandable. Nobody would have blamed me. The world gives us permission to stay small after loss. The world says, of course you're protecting yourself. Of course you've built walls. Of course you've stopped dreaming so big after everything you've been through. But here's what my father taught me. Not just by his words, but by his life. By the way he lived, by the joy he brought to every room he walked into. By the love he gave so freely and so completely. He taught me that the answer to loss is not less living. The answer to loss is more living, more loving, more showing up, more saying yes to the terrifying, beautiful mess of being fully, completely, dangerously alive. So I chose more. In his honor, I chose more. And that choice, that deeply personal, deeply painful, deeply necessary choice, led me to everything that came next. It led me to Nick. It led me to Multi. It led me to a version of my life that I could not have imagined from inside the cage of grief, because I wasn't willing to imagine anything good anymore. Let me talk about love for a moment, because love, romantic love, familial love, self-love, is bound up in so many of our traps in ways we don't always acknowledge. How many of you have stayed in a relationship that was wrong for you because you were afraid of being alone? How many of you have stayed because you didn't believe you deserved better? How many of you have confused familiarity with love, obligation with connection, fear of change with commitment? I have done all of those things, not proudly, but honestly. And how many of you have been afraid to love at all? Truly, vulnerably, completely. Because the last time you did, it cost you something. Because you opened your heart and someone walked through it carelessly and left the door swinging on its hinges. The trap of a closed heart is one of the saddest traps I know. Because a closed heart is safe, yes. A closed heart cannot be broken. But a closed heart also cannot fully feel. It cannot fully connect. It cannot fully live. And there is a kind of slow death in that safety that is more cruel than the risk of loving. To love is to be vulnerable. To be vulnerable is to be brave. And to be brave is to be free. And now I want to talk about something that I think will speak to a lot of you, especially those of you who are young, especially those of you who are standing at the beginning of your journey and feeling the weight of a world that tells you exactly who to be and exactly how to get there. I want to talk about the trap of comparison. We live in a world where everyone's highlight reel is playing on an infinite loop in front of our faces every single day. And it is impossible, truly impossible, not to feel the pull of comparison. She has more followers than me. He got promoted before me. They bought a house and I'm still renting. She's married with 2 kids and I'm still figuring out what I want. He published a book and I haven't even finished a first draft. They seem so confident, so sorted, so together. Why am I so far behind? Can I tell you something? That person you're comparing yourself to, they're comparing themselves to someone else. And that person is comparing themselves to someone else. And all the way down the line, everyone feels like they're behind, like they're not enough, like they're somehow missing the instruction manual that everyone else received at birth. Comparison is the thief of presence. And presence, being fully here, fully alive, fully engaged in your own one specific unrepeatable life, is the only real measure of a life well lived. There is no standard path. There is no timeline you are supposed to be on. The fact that you're doing things at 30, that someone else did at 20, doesn't mean you're behind. It means you're on your path, not theirs. The fact that your journey looks different from what you imagined doesn't mean it's wrong. It might mean it's more perfectly suited to what you actually need than anything you could have planned. I did not follow the standard path. I could not have. My path was too specific, too strange, too mine to fit any standard. And every time I tried to follow someone else's map, I ended up lost. It was only when I started trusting my own compass, the deep, quiet, persistent inner knowing that we all have and most of us have been taught to distrust, that I began to move in a direction that felt true. Your inner compass. Let me spend a moment here because I think this is so important. You have had moments in your life, I know you have, where you just knew. Not intellectually, not logically, not because someone told you or because the spreadsheet said so. You just knew. In your body, in your gut, in that place below thought, you knew. And maybe you followed it. And it led you somewhere extraordinary. And maybe you ignored it and you spent years regretting it. Both kinds of knowing are valuable. Both are your compass trying to point you home. We have been so thoroughly educated away from our own knowing. The entire educational system. And I say this with love, because education matters, because knowledge matters. But the system trains us to prioritize external information over internal wisdom, to trust experts over our own experience, to follow data over intuition. And the result is a generation of highly educated, deeply confused people who can analyze everything and trust nothing, especially not themselves. Your instincts are not irrational. Your intuition is not weakness. Your feelings are not obstacles to good decision making. They are information. Some of the wisest, most sophisticated information available to you is the information your body carries. The tightness in your chest when something is wrong. The lightness in your step when something is right. the inexplicable pull toward a person, a place, a path. Learn to read those signals. Learn to trust them. They are trying to lead you home. Let me tell you about the moment I decided to say yes to Quantico. I had a meeting. I sat across from the creators of this show, and they pitched me this role. Alex Parrish, an FBI agent, the lead of a network drama in America. And everything logical in my head said this was insane. I was at the top of my career in India. I had security, recognition, belonging. Going to America meant starting over. Starting over at a level that would feel, after everything I'd achieved, humiliating. Auditions, callbacks, waiting. But something in my body said yes. So quietly I almost missed it. This small, certain yes underneath all the noise of logic and fear. And I have learned, painfully, repeatedly, absolutely, to listen to that yes, to treat it as sacred. I said yes to Quantico. I said yes to the unknown. I said yes to the discomfort and the uncertainty and the very real possibility of failure. And that yes changed my life completely and forever. Not because it was easy. Not because everything worked out perfectly. Not because I didn't have moments of thinking, what have I done? But because living in alignment with your own yes is the only way to live without regret. And regret, let me tell you about regret. Regret is a heavier cage than any fear. Regret is what you carry when you let the fear of failure stop you from even trying. Regret is asking yourself, what if, for the rest of your life, and never getting an answer. Failure gives you an answer. Failure teaches you. Failure is data. Failure is tuition. But regret is a prison with no release date. I would rather fail spectacularly than succeed quietly in someone else's life. Say that with me, in your heart right now. I would rather fail spectacularly than succeed quietly in someone else's life. Now I want to talk about something that I think a lot of people in this room need to hear. And I want to say it with love. But I also want to say it clearly. I want to talk about the stories we tell ourselves. We are all storytellers. It is one of the most fundamentally human things we do. We take the chaos of our experience and we weave it into narrative. We create meaning out of randomness. We find patterns in what is essentially a beautiful, terrifying, unpredictable universe that cares nothing for our plans. And the stories we tell ourselves, about who we are, about what we deserve, about what is possible for us. Those stories are the architecture of our lives. They determine what we reach for and what we don't. They determine who we love and how we love. They determine whether we live fully or hide carefully. And so many of us are living inside stories that were written for us by someone else. Stories like, people like me don't succeed in places like that. I'm not the kind of person who takes risks. I've never been good at putting myself first. I always end up alone. I always mess things up when things are going well. I don't deserve good things. These are not truths. These are inherited narratives. These are old stories that once served a purpose. Maybe they protected you at some point. Maybe they helped you make sense of a painful experience. But they are no longer serving you. They are holding you hostage to a past version of yourself that you have already grown beyond. You can rewrite the story. That is not a platitude. That is neuroscience. It is psychology. It is the lived experience of every single human being who has ever transformed their life. You can look at the old story, acknowledge it, thank it for whatever protection it once offered, and then gently but firmly put it down and pick up a new one. Not a false story, not toxic positivity, not pretending that the pain didn't happen or that the struggle isn't real. A true story. A story that includes the difficulty and also includes your capacity to meet it. A story that includes the failure and also includes what you learned. A story that includes the wound and also includes the healing. A story that says, this happened to me and I am still here. This was hard and I did it anyway. I am more than my worst moments. I am more than my greatest achievements. I am a human being in progress, and I am worthy of the life I am building. That is the story I want you to tell yourself, starting today, starting right now. Let me talk about women for a moment, specifically because I am one, And because the particular traps that are designed for women in this world are ones I think about every single day. The world has a specific and very effective way of keeping women small. It is subtle and it is ancient, and it is so deeply embedded in our culture that most of us don't even see it. We are told to be strong but not too strong, ambitious but not too ambitious, confident but not arrogant, take up space but don't make people uncomfortable, have an opinion but be open to changing it, succeed but don't make the men around you feel threatened, age gracefully but also never age, be beautiful but don't make it seem like you care about being beautiful. The contradictions are maddening, and they are deliberate, because a woman who is navigating impossible contradictions is a woman who is distracted from her own power. I have been told in my career, in my personal life, in rooms full of powerful people, to dial it down, to be less, to defer, to smile and nod and let someone else take the credit. I have been talked over and undermined and dismissed and underestimated more times than I can count. And every single time I had a choice. I could internalize it, let it become another brick in the cage of self-doubt. Or I could look at it clearly, call it what it is, and choose not to let it define me. I am not angry about those experiences. Anger held for too long is a trap of its own. But I am clear about them. And clarity is power. Knowing what is happening, naming it, refusing to pretend it isn't there. That is the first step toward changing it. To every woman here, your ambition is not a flaw. Your strength is not aggression. Your directness is not rudeness. Your refusal to be diminished is not difficult. You are not too much. You have never been too much. You are exactly enough. And the world needs you, not the edited, softened, carefully managed version of you, but the full, real, completely expressed version of you. And to the men here, the same is true of you. You have been given a different set of impossible contradictions. You have been told to be tough and not feel, to provide and never struggle, to lead and never ask for help, to have all the answers, to never be lost, to never be afraid, to never need anyone. That is a cage too. A cage with very thick walls, built from a very old blueprint, and it costs us more than we know. It costs us our relationships, our health, our joy, our humanness. The willingness to be vulnerable, to say, I don't know, I'm struggling, I need help, I'm afraid, is not weakness. It is the most courageous thing a human being can do. And it is the one thing that can genuinely set you free. Freedom is not the absence of fear. I need to say that one more time. Freedom is not the absence of fear. If you are waiting until you are no longer afraid before you take the leap, you will be waiting for the rest of your life. Fear is not a stop sign. Fear is a signal. It is pointing directly at what matters most to you. The things that don't scare you are the things you don't care about. The things that terrify you are usually the things you were born to do. What is the thing that you want so badly that the wanting itself scares you? What is the life you imagine late at night when everyone is asleep and you let yourself dream without the censor of practicality? What is the version of you that lives just on the other side of every fear you have? That is where I want you to go. Not some distant, theoretical, one day when everything is perfect, version of going there. I mean, go there. Go there imperfectly, messily, with your fears still intact and your doubts still loud and your support system maybe not entirely on board. Go there anyway. Because that version of you, the you who is fully alive, fully expressed, fully free, that version of you doesn't exist anywhere else. It exists only on the other side of the leap. I think about the people who changed history. I think about every person who ever did something that the world said was impossible. I think about Marie Curie working in a shed because the university wouldn't give a woman a lab. I think about Malala standing up for the right to education in the face of a bullet. I think about every immigrant who ever left everything they knew and carried their dreams across an ocean to a country that wasn't sure it wanted them. I think about every single human being who looked at the closed door and built their own. None of those people were fearless. None of them had certainty. None of them had a guarantee. They had something more powerful than a guarantee. They had conviction. They had a burning, unquenchable, irrational, beautiful conviction that what they were doing mattered, that they were called to something, that the voice inside them that said, "Go forward," was louder, ultimately, than every voice that said, "Turn back." That conviction is available to you. It lives inside you right now. You don't need to go find it somewhere. You don't need a qualification or a permission slip or someone else's validation. It is there. It has always been there. It is the thing that brought you here today, to this moment, listening to these words, because something in you knows. It knows that you are made for more than the life you've been living. Trust that knowing. Act on that knowing. And when the world pushes back, and it will push back, make no mistake, it will push back with everything it has. When the world pushes back, push harder. Not with aggression, not with ego, with the quiet, unwavering, unshakable force of someone who knows their own worth. Someone who has done the inner work. Someone who has sat in the darkness and found the light. Someone who has been knocked down and gotten back up so many times that the floor has become familiar and the rising has become second nature. I want to talk about one more trap before I bring this home. The final trap, the most insidious one of all, the trap of perfectionism. How many of you have an idea that you haven't started yet because it isn't fully formed? How many of you have a business, a book, a painting, a conversation, a life that you haven't begun because you're waiting until you can do it perfectly? How many of you have been holding yourself hostage to a standard of perfection that not only isn't attainable, it was never real? Perfectionism is fear wearing a very convincing disguise. It looks like standards, it looks like discipline, it looks like care and craft and commitment. But underneath, at its core, what perfectionism is saying is, if I do it imperfectly, I will be rejected. If I fail, I am a failure. If I show my work before it's perfect, people will see that I'm not enough. So I won't show my work, I'll just keep working on it. In private. Forever. Where it's safe. Nothing great was ever created by someone waiting until they were ready. Nothing significant was ever built by someone waiting until they had all the answers. The greatest things in human history were begun imperfectly, messily, with the creator terrified and uncertain and doing it anyway. Done is better than perfect. Beginning is better than waiting. Imperfect and alive is infinitely more powerful than perfect and never born. Start before you're ready. Put it out into the world before it's polished. Learn in public, fail in public, grow in public. Let the world see you in process, because the world doesn't need your perfection. The world needs your truth, and your truth is always, always more powerful than your performance. I have made mistakes in public. I have stumbled and misspoken and gotten things wrong in front of millions of people. And every single time, I have had a choice to hide or stand. I choose to stand, not because I'm not embarrassed, not because it doesn't hurt, but because hiding is a kind of death, and I refuse to die quietly. So here we are. We have come a long way together tonight. We've talked about the trap of other people's opinions, the trap of comfort, the trap of comparison, the trap of a closed heart, the trap of old stories, the trap of avoidance, the trap of perfectionism, and the greatest trap of all, the trap of being so afraid of your own potential that you choose a smaller life over the magnificent risk of the one you were actually born to live. And now I want to leave you with this. You are going to walk out of here, or close this video, or put down your phone, and the world is going to be exactly the same as it was before. The challenges will still be there. The doubters will still be there. The systems that try to keep you small will still be there. The fear will still be there, but something in you can be different. You can make a decision right now, in this moment, that you are done being a passive participant in your own life. You can make a decision that the cage, however real, however old, however comfortably familiar, is no longer your home. You can make a decision that the life you are here to live deserves to actually be lived. Not perfectly, not fearlessly, not with all the answers, but fully, hungrily, with your whole heart, your whole soul, your whole truth. My father called me Mimi. He believed in me before I believed in myself. And there are days, even now, when I am afraid, when I am uncertain, when the world feels heavy and the path feels dark. There are days when I close my eyes and I hear his voice. Mimi, you can do anything. Don't let anyone tell you differently. I want to be that voice for you tonight. I want to be the person who looks you in the eye and tells you what you might not have heard enough. What you might not have heard at all. You can do anything. You were not born to be small. You were not born to be invisible. You were not born to make yourself comfortable to a world that was too afraid to dream as big as you dream. You were born to be exactly, completely, unapologetically yourself. And that self, that wild, wonderful, complicated, powerful self, is not trapped. It is waiting. It is waiting for you to say yes. It is waiting for you to take one step. One single, terrifying, glorious step in the direction of the life you know in your bones you are supposed to live. The door of your cage is not locked. It never was. It is waiting for you to push it open. And the world on the other side, your world, the one built on your truth, your courage, your love, your beautiful, unruly, extraordinary life, that world is real. It is possible. It is yours. All you have to do is choose it. Choose it today. Choose it right now. Choose yourself. Thank you.